Pets are one of the most important parts of Hypixel Skyblock, and I know this has been done before, but let's rank them. So I'm going to be using this on tier list maker, or tier lists, I don't know what it is. I post a link in the description though. So to start off quickly, we're going to start off with the B pet. Now the B pet is alright, because it's pretty Iron Man friendly, and it's actually really cheap as well. And the last ability, the weaponized honey, it's not exactly a 25% reduction. I'm not entirely sure how it works, but it's pretty okay. So yeah, it's pretty cheap, so I'll put it in B tier. Okay, so next up is the chicken pet. Now the chicken pet, I'm gonna be honest, is pretty crap. The only thing it might actually be good for is like chicken farms or like chicken minions on an island. But I think if this was more expensive, I'd put it in D tier. But for now, it gets a low C. Next up, elephants. I'd say, I mean, it's clearly the best pet for farming. Well, actually, the Mushin cow might be better if you have really high strength, but for most people, it's probably going to be the better pets. However, it is a farming pet, which is a bit yikes. So for now, farming kind of sucks already as it is, so I think I'm going to put this in high B tier, to be honest. Alright, so next up, pig pet, D tier, no questions asked. Although, rip Technoblade, I love Technoblade. But yeah, pig pet goes D. Rabbit pet, I'm inclined to put it at A tier, just because, I mean, it is a farming pet, but the farming XP boost is actually really good for melon minions. And yeah, that's why I'm giving it an A tier, because it's just really good for melon minions, and like, it's also pretty cheap as well, like it doesn't cost a lot to craft. So now there's armadillo. Now, armadillo is actually really cheap as well. Now, originally I was going to put this pretty low down the list, although, of course, there is armadillo mining, which is probably the best money making method in the game right now. So just because of how cheap it is, I'm inclined to go put it in A tier. Now moving on to bat pet, basically like the only practical use is actually in a spooky festival, and is actually decent for spooky fishing as well. So I'm probably gonna give it a B tier. Yeah, I think that's probably a good position for it. So next up we have the Endermite pet. Now the Endermite pet actually got like a kind of a rework in like the new End Island update. Pre-buff, I would say probably a D tier, high D tier, but I'd maybe give it a low C tier. Like the might bait and stuff is not actually too bad, and like the draconic altar thing, you know, it's pretty mid, but I don't think it's as bad to justify putting it in D. Now moving on to rock pet. Now I would say rock pet, like the actual pet itself is honestly garbage. However, but it gives you a nice bit of defense, but the perks are pretty useless in itself. The only thing it is good for is, and you get the legendary rock and Silas George for like 12 million coins. So for that reason alone, it's getting a C tier. But yeah, not just bad enough to give it a D. Now Scather. Now Scather's a bit of a weird one because it's really expensive, but it is probably one of the better mining pets in the game. But that's only for jade mining, so yeah, I put it like at the top of the B tier, to be honest. It's just really expensive, so yeah, that's why. Next up, silverfish. I probably give this A tier, honestly. Mining XP boost is pretty decent. Oh yeah, also the haste can be used in like dungeon cheeses as well, so yeah, I definitely give this A tier. Next up, well, wither skeleton. I'd say wither skeleton. Now, this is either very high A tier, or I give it S tier, to be honest. For now, I'm actually going to put it S tier, because I think it's actually really good. In terms of F7 dungeons, I think like in general it's just a really good damage pet. Like as a mining pet, it's also really easy to level up. So for those reasons alone, I'm just gonna go ahead and give it an S tier actually. So yeah. Next up, Mithril Golem. This is a weird one because I feel like because it's also decent for mithril mining as well. It's either low A or high B. You know, I think I'm actually gonna give it A tier, to be honest. I think it's actually it does just enough to get it into A tier for me. So now we're done with all the mining pets, and let's go move on to the combo pets now. So starting off with the black cat. Now the black cat, it's pretty good because it gives you a load of speed, pet luck, and magic find, and it's probably the best pet for magic find. So for that reason, I know how much people love magic find. I think it goes in S tier, to be honest, because I think like giving pet luck as itself in this stat is like a really unique thing, to be honest. So yeah, that's why it gets the S tier. Now next up, Blaze Pets. Blaze Pet's actually also pretty good in itself because like it makes Frozen Blaze viable, and like the double link hot potato books is pretty nice as well. S tier I think is a little bit high for it maybe, so I would give it like A tier-ish. I think that's fair. The two dragons, Ender Dragon, I'm definitely giving S tier because Ender Dragon, it's got like the fact that so many people try to get it, and ultimately like the 10% stat boost is pretty good as well. I'm also gonna give the Golden Dragon S tier. Despite how expensive these pets are, I still think that just like they are actually just that good. Although maybe I'd be considering dropping Golden Dragon to high A tier, but I think S tier is fine. So next up, we actually have the Enderman pet. Now, the Enderman pet is actually one of the, well, like a kind of a weird pet because, like, in my mind, it's actually pretty good for early game because of the damage reduction from Enderman and also the base 75 crit damage at max level. But then also it's, like, useful at end game for Void Gloom Slayer because of the 40% combat XP boost. So, it's also pretty cheap as well. So, I am actually just going to go and buy this in A tier, to be honest. Like, I think it's better than these. So, next up, we have the Ghoul pet. Now, the Ghoul pet is pretty bad in itself, although it does give it like some zombie sword stuff and like some other like vitality, but yeah, I'd say it goes in C tier. Golem, I'd say it's like decent for damage and it's actually not too expensive either, so yeah, I'll go put this in B tier because I think like in my mind it's just a pretty average pet, to be honest. Grandma Wolf is kind of a weird one to rate because like there's no point having it equipped because it's like basically just a permanent stat boost. Yeah, it just can go in A, I guess. That's fine. Griffin, like Uncommon Griffin is actually pretty decent for like really like early game / mid game. So that's decent in itself. And then Diana obviously like legendary. I mean Griffin's okay for like money as well, but it's not as good as it once was. The strength nerf hit it hard as well. Yeah, I think high B tier is fair. Alright, so next up we have the horse pet. Yeah, this is straight garbage. I'm not gonna try and disguise this. You know what, whilst we're here, I may as well just put Skeleton Horse in there because they kind of do the same thing. They're both just all terrible. Hound Pet's actually interesting because it's actually fairly good for AFKing slime setups. And like there's a couple of niche things which it can actually do, but it's still relatively expensive. So for now at least, it gets a C tier for me. Although if there's like an actually good use for it, then it might go up to B tier. Jerry, yeah, D tier. I don't think there's much questions asked about this. Jerry's like kind of like a massive meme, so yeah. Now, Magma Cube, I know we're on a string of bad pets here, but it's pretty much hot trash. Apart from slime minions, although I'm pretty sure that the hound pet's actually better than the Magma Cube pet is anyway, so I'm going to give it C tier because it does have a use, which makes it not D tier, but it's still really bad use. Phoenix pet, now I could put this in C tier, but I honestly think it's actually just awful. Like, the first pack is somewhat okay, because it gives you a second life, but who uses, like, a bloody phoenix? It's so bad, and it's so rare, so yeah, D tier for me. Pigman pet, next. Where do I put this? I'd say probably C tier as well, because, like, it can actually work as a somewhat okay damage pet. That's the only reason why I'm willing to put it in C. Alright, rat pet next. Now, I think this is actually better than the other pets in the D tier, because it does actually somewhat have a use. Because I'm pretty sure like the magic find that the rat's blessing can actually sometimes get you some good jobs. I don't really know, but I've heard some stories about that. So yeah, it still goes into D tier because it's just a massive meme. But yeah, that's where it goes. Skeleton next. Skeleton's actually okay for dungeons. Like it gives you actually a pretty decent boost to your arrows in dungeons. You're really squishy still, but yeah. For like early game / maybe early mid game, it might actually do the trick. But you know what else starts with this rest? That's right, the subscribe button. If you liked the video and enjoyed it so far, then you know what to do. And if you like this sort of video, then yeah, just put it in the comments. Back to the video. Snowman pet I also think is a bit iffy because the only real reason I see use is through AFK, and I'm gonna be real, I really hate AFKs, so it does have a use, so I'm putting it C. So getting to the end of the combat pets, next is the spider pet. Spider pet's so bad, like honestly. Like I thought that the tarantula pet at least has somewhat of a use, because you get the 50% XP against spiders, so that's why it goes in C tier. The spiders thing, like the only thing is remotely good is the fact that you get the tarantula minion boost. I can't put this high in detail, I'm sorry. Spirit pet is straight garbage, so yeah, that's straight D tier. D tier, like none of its perks are actually good. It's not even cheap as well. Like if it was cheap, it would maybe get to a C tier, but it's not even cheap, so yeah. Next up, we have the tiger. Now, tiger's actually a pretty good damage pet. because it gives you like a good amount of ferocity. So for that reason, I'm going to put it in A tier because there's a couple of good uses for it, and specifically ferocity. Bow pet as well. I'm going to probably put that. You know, I think it's going to go in A tier because it's actually pretty good for mining, and like ruby mining and stuff, and topaz mining, like all that jazz. But yeah, no, I think it's also decent for AFKing. So yeah, that's why it goes there. So carrying on with the turtle pet, I reckon like it gives you a nice bit of defense. It's a pretty defense focused pet, but ultimately I think health hits harder, and I think other EHP pets are both cheaper and better. So yeah, I mean B tier goes. Now next up, wolf pet. Now I think wolf pet's actually pretty damn good. It gives a really nice buff for like Sven Slayer for early game, and also obviously you get loads and loads of good combat XP. I'm gonna put it at a fairly high A tier. Zombie pet. Now zombie pet's a bit of a weird one because I used to think that this is like hot trash. Looking at the perks, like the 25% damage increase to zombies, and you gain a bit of health as well, it's not actually all that bad. I still don't think it's good enough to make it into B tier, considering it's not like really early game either. So yeah, I think it goes in C tier. Giraffe is pretty awful. It's not as bad as some of the ones on this list. In D, it's also foraging, and foraging is awful. So yeah, D it is. Lion, another foraging pet. I mean, these ones all are. This one also goes in the B tier. I think like Lion's actually got quite a lot of potential as being a good combat pet, and I think it's pretty much like evens out with the tiger in terms of being good for its price. But the fact it's a foraging pet just makes it so bad to level up. Next up, monkey. I would say like for foraging, it is probably the best pet because you get the like decapitator axe cooldown reduction. For that reason, I reckon it's probably going to be a B tier. Same with ocelot. Foraging is pretty bad in itself, but the XP boost is actually pretty good. So yeah, and also like if you ever like, I think cherry boxes are effective. I'd say like they're good skill grinding pets. So now moving on to fishing wise, ammonite. I would say that this combined with dolphin is one of the best pets for fishing. So I mean, ammonite focuses on giving a good balance between sea creature and fishing speed, and dolphin gives mainly sea creature. Probably going to give them both A tier because I think they're actually pretty good both for fishing, if I'm really honest. Now, Baby Yeti and Blue Whale, ironically they're fishing pets, but they're basically combat pets. They're both really good for EHP and they serve a similar purpose. The Yeti gives you good defense based on your strength, so it's obviously based on Berserker, and the Blue Whale gives you defense based on your health. So for that reason, they're both going in S tier. They're just really good, like all round, really common, like EHP pets, great for dungeons. Overall, I'd say they're pretty pog. Next up, flying fish pet. Although if you're just using the flying fish pet itself, it's a pretty underwhelming pet because you don't actually get any secret chance, you're only getting fishing speed, which isn't, to be honest, great. If you're for instance trophy fishing or pet swapping, then the flying fish is actually quite important. So for that reason, I'm actually going to give it probably like a B tier, like maybe probably a high B. Next up, Megalodon. I think Megalodon has actually quite a lot of potential because it gives good magic find. It gives magic find as a base stat. It also gives you like damage based on your kills and speed, which makes it good for berserkers. And the damage boost is nice. I still don't think it's good enough to be A tier personally for me, because I just don't think it's on the same level. But I'd say it's a high-ish B tier. Squid pet, I'm going to give A because I think it's good for ink fishing first of all, and in terms of fishing XP is also pretty good. Moving on to the last couple of pets, the Enchanting Pets. Guardian, I mean, it's really crap except for it gives enchanting XP, but frankly it's really not that useful because it's so easy to level up anyway. And like if you're using enchanting like table, then you may as well just use other pets to level it up. So I think C tier, considering it's not even that cheap as well. Parrot pets, I'm also going to give a C because it's not ultimately all that useful because it doesn't really do much except for the god potion boost is somewhat nice. So it's not D tier because it does have a niche use, but it's not B tier because it's not a pet I'd recommend. Next up, jellyfish. Jellyfish is actually pretty good for healers, but most importantly, it buffs the powerfulness of your dungeon potions by 50% at level 100. And of course, the alchemy pets, so they're really easy to level up. For me, I can't justify giving this an A tier, but I still think it's actually a pretty solid B tier because it serves a good purpose in dungeon potions, and it also works as a decent setup for healers. Although, as you get better at the game, you probably go with more like tank pets. Now, lastly on this list, we have the sheep pet. Now, the sheep pet is actually pretty good for like early game mages, and in terms of intelligence wise, it's actually pretty good as well. I think personally, this actually deserves to go in A tier, but the fact it's an alchemy pet as well makes it so easy to level up, and like it just gives decently good mana. It gives you mana reduction, and if you're struggling for damage or EHP, it gives ability damage as well. I think it's pretty decent. Now, although it may look like I'm finished, there are actually a couple of pets that are not on this tier list that I want to briefly mention. Now, firstly, Bingo. Next is Kuja. Kuja pets are, again, a bit of a weird one because it kind of active on the Crimson Isle. I mean, it's good because you don't have to have it equipped. So, I mean, like B or A tier. I wouldn't say S tier because it's just, I mean, it's just a good stat buff, but it's also fairly annoying to get. So, Snail is a bit of a funny one because it doesn't really have any use apart from the fact that it gives you mining fortune for non-ores. I think that it's probably going to get a C from me. I don't think it does enough to be a B. Then Mushroom Cow, farming wise, it is actually sometimes better than the elephant because if you have enough strength and you get mushrooms for every time you harvest a crop, it can actually get not too bad in fairness. So yeah, I'm giving it a B tier because it does serve some use. And finally, to end things off, it's going to be the Gabagool pets. The Sub-Zero Wisp. Sub-Zero Wisp is crazy expensive. The mana regen is nice, but ultimately I don't think it's that good. For me, it's going in the B tier. It's very good for Blaze Slayer, don't get me wrong. It's the best pet for Blaze Slayer, but it doesn't really serve much outside of dungeons, or outside of Slayers, sorry. And with that, that's probably going to wrap up this video. If you enjoyed this video, or if you want to see like more videos like this, then just leave something in the comments, just saying what you thought of it. If you didn't like it at all, then just say that. Like, please, I just want honest feedback. And anyways, thank you for watching until the end of this video, and I hope you have a good rest of your day, and have a good rest of 2023.